In 1977, Chris Farmer and Peta Frampton, a young couple from Manchester, UK, were embracing life with enthusiasm. Chris, a 25-year-old recent medical school graduate from Manchester Grammar School, and Peta, a 24-year-old fresh law graduate from Whalley Range High School, had been inseparable since meeting at the age of 14. After their graduation, they decided to fulfill a shared dream of traveling the world together. Their adventure began in Australia and soon extended to Central America, maintaining regular contact with their families throughout their journey. Chris often sent cassette tapes back home, sharing updates and thoughts, while Peta wrote detailed letters to her mother, chronicling their experiences. During their travels through Latin America, they encountered Silas Duane Boston, an American with a party spirit, who ran a tour guide business from his 32-foot boat named Justin B. Duane, accompanied by his young sons, Vincent and Russell, aged 13 and 12 respectively, offered the couple a chance to explore Belize by sea. Chris and Peta eagerly accepted, looking forward to the sailing experience and new adventures. Initially, the group enjoyed their time together. Chris was thrilled to learn about sailing and navigation from Duane, and he often played his favorite music from bands like Pink Floyd, Genesis, and David Bowie on his boombox, creating a lively atmosphere on board. The group would spend their days spearfishing in the crystal blue waters, enjoying their catch for dinner each evening. Peta, while usually more reserved, enjoyed sunbathing and had even offered to tutor Duane's sons during the trip. However, not all was smooth on the Justin B. On June 29, 1978, Peta wrote to her family about frequent quarrels among the boys and Duane's short temper, hinting at underlying tensions. This would be one of her final communications. Weeks of silence followed, prompting their families to alert the authorities. Unbeknownst to them, in July 1978, 2 bodies, showing signs of torture and bound to engine parts, were found off the coast of Guatemala. They were quietly buried under cement crosses, unidentified by the local authorities. The once vibrant journey of Chris and Peta had taken a tragic turn. Meanwhile, a chilling confession emerged from Duane's 2 sons, one that would remain hidden for many years. The boys revealed to their grandmother that during one of Duane's drug and alcohol-fueled rages, he had turned violent toward them. Chris had intervened, defending the boys from their aggressive father. When Duane tried to retaliate, he clumsily swung at Chris and accidentally fell into the ocean, prompting Chris to quip, "Maybe that will help you cool off." This incident left Duane humiliated and thirsting for revenge. The following day, Duane announced to Chris and Peta that he planned to drop them off at a small fishing village near Livingston, Guatemala. However, he deceitfully stopped the boat short of the port, claiming they lacked the proper visas to enter and would need to wait until sunset. Eager to leave the boat and its mounting tensions, the couple looked forward to disembarking, tired of the monotonous ocean views and Peta's discomfort over the lack of privacy. As the sun began to set, Duane instructed Chris to retrieve the anchor from the front of the boat, indicating they would soon head to the port. As Chris complied, Duane followed him with a black billy club and viciously attacked him, striking him so hard that the club broke in 2. Duane's blows were so severe he claimed to hear Chris's skull crack. Watching in horror, Duane's sons felt paralyzed by fear, particularly Vince, who felt too small and terrified to intervene. Duane then escalated the violence, stabbing Chris in the chest with a fillet knife. Despite the severe injuries, Chris was still alive. Peta, hearing the noise, emerged from below deck, but Duane threatened her with a spear gun, forcing her back. He then tied Chris up and went to confront Peta, who was below deck writing letters. Vince recalled that his father spent over an hour with Peta. When Duane returned on deck, he ordered Vince to guard her, now naked and bound. Peta furiously told Vince, "You are going to burn in hell," her voice reflecting not despair, but fierce anger. Vince later reflected on the surreal and grim nature of the situation, comparing it to a horror movie. He felt that there was nothing they could do to dissuade their father from his brutal course of action. The next morning, on July 4th, 1978, Duane callously misled the still-bound but alive Chris and Peta, claiming he would leave them tied to a tree on a nearby island and then abandon them. Vince believed this was a ploy to keep them calm. Duane then covered their heads with bags, claiming he didn't want them to see their location, and placed iron gears next to them, preparing for a more sinister plan. Duane began fastening the ropes tied around Chris and Peta to a heavy gear, deceiving them with assurances that he was letting them go near the shore. In reality, they were far out in the deep, dark, and unforgiving waters of the ocean. As he threw the gear overboard, he pushed Chris into the sea. The weight quickly pulled Chris down into the murky depths, vanishing from sight. Vince and Russell watched in dismay as their father's actions unfolded. At the same time, Peta, unable to see with a plastic bag over her head, began screaming, frantically calling out to Chris, asking if he was okay. She received no response. Moments later, Duane callously threw Peta into the ocean as well, where she too was dragged down by the weight of the gear. After watching the couple disappear, Duane coldly glanced at his watch and informed his sons, "They're dead now." He then turned to his sons with a chilling warning, "If you snitch, you die." He emphasized that being a snitch was the worst thing they could be and threatened their lives if they ever disclosed what they had witnessed or if the authorities learned about it. Despite the terrifying threats, Vince confided in his grandmother about the gruesome events he had witnessed. It was in August 1978 that he spoke up, but his grandmother, fearing for their safety and the repercussions, advised him to keep silent. She had previously revealed a harrowing family secret that explained why Duane had moved from Sacramento, California to Belize with his sons. Around Christmas, she had told Vince and Russell the grim truth about their mother, who had been missing since 1968. Santa Claus isn't real, and your father shot your mother. Duane's wife, Mary Lou, had disappeared under mysterious circumstances after expressing her desire for a divorce. In a fit of rage and fear of losing his sons, Duane had lured her into a car, threatened her with a gun, and fatally shot her as she attempted to escape. Duane had a history of criminal behavior, including burglary, which he had learned from his father. He also wanted Vince to join in on these criminal activities, but Vince resisted, earning scornful remarks from his father like, "You can't be my son, you're too goody-goody," and the derisive nickname, Goody Two-Shoes. Before fleeing to Belize, Duane had also been entangled in rape charges, seeking a new start to evade prosecution. By the end of August, with no communication from Chris or Peta, their worried families, lacking any means to contact them, reported their disappearance to the authorities. The last letter from Peta had been sent from Livingston, Guatemala, a place engulfed in civil war at the time. However, the family grew suspicious since the couple had visas for Honduras and had no plans to visit Guatemala. The disappearance of the British couple soon caught the media's attention, becoming a headline story as concerns and speculations intensified. It raised suspicions when Peta's final letter, dated in June, was only posted in mid-July, a 3-week delay. This was unusual for Peta, who was known for her diligence in staying in constant touch with her family back home. Authorities speculated on various scenarios, including the possibility that a storm might have stranded the couple on a Belizean island, or that they had become entangled in a drug smuggling operation and were incarcerated, with one newspaper suggesting they might be rotting in jail. Chris's father, Charles Farmer, a BBC journalist, poured his energy and resources into uncovering the truth about his son and his girlfriend's disappearance. After conducting his thorough investigations, he compiled and submitted a detailed file to the police. A key piece of evidence in this file was a port document indicating that the boat Justin B, operated by Duane, had departed Belize on June 26th with Duane, his sons Chris and Peta listed as on board. However, documents later showed that when the boat arrived in Livingston on July 6th, Chris and Peta were no longer listed among the crew. 17 weeks after their last contact, in October 1978, the families learned that Duane Boston, the last person seen with Chris and Peta, had quickly sold his boat in July and returned to Sacramento, California. Police tracked him down for questioning, and Duane claimed he had left the couple ashore in Guatemala near Livingston. He further alleged that they were drug addicts who had requested to be dropped off at a sparsely inhabited island near the peninsula, an unlikely and unconvincing explanation. Taking matters further, Chris's father managed to obtain Duane Boston's telephone number. On January 10, 1979, Charles Farmer made a recorded phone call to Duane, but it was Duane's father, Russell Boston, who answered. During the call, Charles attempted to inquire about his son and his girlfriend's last known whereabouts, but Russell quickly diverted the conversation, suggesting without basis that the couple might be in Colombia. When Charles requested Duane's home address, Russell claimed he didn't have it, but offered to forward a letter to Duane if Charles chose to write one. This ongoing mystery and the elusive responses continued to torment the loved ones of Chris Farmer and Peta Frampton. More heartbreaking news would follow on February 1st, 1979, 31 weeks after the couple was last heard from, deepening the anguish for their families and friends. On that day, a somber phone call shattered the peace for Chris's father. His daughter Penny saw him collapse as heart-wrenching news was delivered from the other end. On July 8th, just 8 days after Chris and Peta had vanished the previous year, fishermen had discovered 2 brutally damaged bodies floating 200 meters off a peninsula, buried anonymously soon after. These were later confirmed to be Chris and Peta. With their worst fears realized, the families shifted their focus to Duane Boston, the American sailor last seen with the couple. They urgently requested that authorities interview Duane's young sons, Vincent and Russell, hoping they might hold essential information. Unfortunately, the authorities did not pursue this avenue. As the 1970s drew to a close, Duane mysteriously vanished. He reappeared on the radar in February 1981 in California, arrested not for crimes related to Chris and Peta, but for abducting his 4-year-old child, who had not been present on the boat. While in custody, California detectives were informed by the Manchester, UK police that Duane was a suspect in the disappearance of Chris and Peta. During his interrogation about his child's abduction, detectives seized the opportunity to press him about the couple. Duane claimed he had initially met them in a hotel in Belize and invited them onto his boat, only to soon dismiss them as deadbeats. According to Duane, Peta was constantly drinking and Chris was using drugs. He alleged that the last he saw of them, they were boarding a boat with island natives. The detectives sensed Duane's guilt, but lacked concrete evidence to detain him further, leading to his release without charges. The authorities then considered interviewing Vincent and Russell critical to solving the case, but their whereabouts were unknown. Back in England, police informed the victims' families of their strong belief that Duane was responsible for the tragedy, yet they admitted that proving his guilt was impossible with the available evidence. The case inevitably grew cold. 3 years after the tragic events, Vincent left home. He tried to disclose what he knew to the police, but his attempts were dismissed as mere hearsay. The shadow of his father's dark past loomed large over him. At 17, Vincent joined the Navy, seeking solace and distance from his troubling family legacy, yet he remained haunted by the memory of Chris and Peta's grief-stricken families. Determined to seek justice, Vincent once again reached out to the police, this time contacting the Manchester force. However, his efforts were thwarted by a bizarre coincidence: the similarity between the victim's name, Peta Frampton, and that of Peter Frampton, a prominent musician at the time. This led to his serious claims being mistaken for a prank. Frustrated and heartbroken, Vincent found himself again dismissed by those he hoped would help. Vince left the Navy in 1999, 21 years after the tragic deaths of Chris and Peta. His determination to uncover the truth about his mother's whereabouts and to seek justice for Chris and Peta's families remained unwavering. Despite his repeated pleas for assistance, his calls to authorities went largely ignored. In January 1999, Vince's brother, Russell Boston, also reached out to the police to report their father for murder. Again, their attempts were met with silence. no follow-up action was taken by the authorities, not one to surrender. Vince made a renewed effort in 2012. He compiled a detailed file containing photographs, personal accounts, and timelines related to the murder and sent it to the Sacramento Police Department. I kept calling and sending emails. Finally, in 2012, I found the cold case department at Sacramento Police Department. The officer was the first one that took me seriously, Vincent recalled. Meanwhile, Chris and Peta's relatives continued their quest to track down Duane and his sons. In 2015, Penny Farmer, Chris's sister, utilized a new tool not available in previous decades: social media. She turned to Facebook, where she searched for the man suspected of murdering her brother. On her screen appeared the profiles of those she had been searching for all these years. Through her search, Penny also discovered Vincent's Facebook page filled with posts about his late mother. Frustrated, she initially believed that Vincent and Russell had witnessed their father's crimes and kept silent. However, she would soon learn that this was not the case. Using an anonymous Facebook account, Penny messaged Vincent and Russell, directly asking if they had been on board the Justin B boat in 1978. She also urged detectives in Manchester to arrest Duane. When the Manchester detectives looked into their database for information on the cold case, they initially found nothing. The family was horrified at the potential loss of crucial evidence. However, they managed to reach the original detective who had worked on the case, now retired. He informed them that, fortunately, he had kept a copy of the entire case archives in his garden shed. This archive contained essential items such as official documents, court records, autopsy findings, and Peta's final letter home, providing new evidence to reignite the investigation. The case was gaining momentum once again. UK police were alerted that the Sacramento police were actively looking into Duane Boston. Chris and Peta's families were finally informed that Duane's sons had come forward with allegations against their father, bringing renewed hope that justice might at last be served. During the investigation, after years of no contact, Duane Boston unexpectedly reached out to Vincent on Facebook. Vincent suspected his father knew he had approached the police and feared retaliation. In 2016, 38 years following the murders, FBI agents intended to arrest Silas Duane Boston at the care facility where he resided. However, upon their arrival, they discovered that Duane had been transferred to another care home 2 days earlier. Worried that Duane might be on the run, Vincent was fraught with fear for his own safety during the agents' 4 or 5 hour drive to the new location. When they finally arrived, they found Duane, now a frail 75-year-old man, sitting in a wheelchair. He was arrested and taken into custody. The Farmer family requested a swift trial, hoping that Chris's then 92-year-old mother would live to see justice served for her son. However, in a deeply unfortunate turn, Duane died in hospital just 2 weeks before the pre-trial hearings were set to begin in the U.S. He had opted to discontinue his medical treatment, effectively ending his life and dashing the family's nearly 40-year-long hopes for justice. The tragedy was compounded for the families of Peta Frampton and Chris Farmer when they were informed that the remains of their loved ones had been irrevocably lost. However, in 2019, a breakthrough occurred. A letter along with 2 photographs taken in 1984 unexpectedly emerged, pointing to their burial location in a cemetery in Puerto Barrios. New evidence brought Chris's sister, Penny Farmer, together with BBC 5 Live journalist Dan Maudsley to chase down these leads. They learned that an American pastor, Gary McClure, was the only person known to have visited the graves. He had taken photos of the cement crosses marking the graves in 1984, which he included in a letter to a friend of the Farmer family. Eventually, the pastor was located and provided new details that revitalized hopes of finding the graves. Armed with this new information, Penny and BBC reporter Dan traveled to Puerto Barrios in December to make a final attempt to locate the graves. "It was far more shambolic than I ever appreciated," Penny observed, noting the chaotic layout of the cemetery. Tomb after tomb. There was no pattern to them. Despite the disorder, the information provided by Pastor McClure proved crucial. After about an hour of searching, they found Chris's graveside. Shortly thereafter, Dan uncovered Peta's cross hidden under a pile of leaves. Penny reflected on the profound impact of locating the graves, sharing, "I didn't realize how significant it would be until I stood by his graveside. It was unexpectedly emotional." This discovery, however, only led to more questions. We thought the FBI was making a strong effort. They assured us of their diligent pursuit, but it took us only an hour to find them by closely following the pastor's directions, Penny explained, puzzled by the ease with which they found the graves compared to the lengthy official investigations. Penny, who is married to Peta's older brother Blaze, expressed a deep and enduring remembrance of Chris and Peta. They were incredibly bright and gifted, with so much to contribute to the world. Chris would have been an outstanding doctor. He had such a caring soul. And Peta, with her beautiful dark hair, remains vivid in my memory. Her words conveyed a mixture of admiration and sorrow, underscoring the profound loss felt by their family.